Imagine a silver wall in the middle of the desert, stretching further than your eyes can follow and rising taller than most skyscrapers. A city with no cars, no streets, and no sprawl. Just mirrored walls and a promise that everything you need is only a short walk away. It sounds like a science fiction film, yet this is Saudi Arabia's vision of the Line, a city meant to house millions. But as the costs climb toward $1 trillion and deadlines slip further away, many are asking, is this the future of urban life or a mirage slowly fading in the desert heat? Back in 2017, Saudi Arabia's leadership revealed an audacious plan under the country's Vision 2030 program. Build NEOM, a sprawling 26,500 square kilometer development along the Red Sea. The idea wasn't only about prestige. For decades, the Saudi economy leaned almost entirely on oil, and Vision 2030 promised a path beyond that dependence. NEOM would be the crown jewel, funded and directed by the Public Investment Fund, the kingdom's powerful sovereign wealth fund. From the very start, NEOM was marketed as more than a single city. It was presented as an ecosystem of futuristic zones. The Line was placed front and center, a revolutionary concept where 9 million people would eventually live within a 170-kilometer strip, only 200 meters wide but soaring 500 meters into the air, according to The Guardian. Beside it, other projects like Oxagon, a floating port and industrial hub, Sindala, a luxury island for yachting tourism, and Trojana, a mountain resort meant to host the 2029 Asian Winter Games, were designed to prove progress early while the main challenge of the Line unfolded more slowly. The sheer ambition caught the world's attention. Few nations had ever attempted something on this scale, let alone in the middle of an unforgiving desert. The plan was to create a beacon of technology, renewable energy, and new ways of living. But the boldness that drew praise also raised eyebrows, because with ambition this large comes a high risk of falling short. When the Line was announced again in 2021 with fresh details, the pitch was clear and unforgettable. Instead of endless highways and choking traffic, residents would live in vertical neighborhoods where daily needs, schools, clinics, shops were just a 5-minute walk from home. Forbes revealed that a high-speed train running end-to-end would make the entire city crossable in 20 minutes. No private cars, no pollution, no wasted time. The exterior would be wrapped in mirrored panels, reflecting the desert landscape, while the interior layers stacked homes, parks, and offices in a way meant to blend density with greenery. On paper, it was presented as nothing less than a revolution in city design. Traditional cities sprawl outward, eating up land and pushing nature aside. The Line promised the opposite: compact living that protects the surrounding environment. It was to be powered entirely by renewable energy, a city where data and AI would manage everything from traffic flows to air quality. The branding was as sleek as the mirrored walls shown in renderings. Every detail was simplified into memorable promises: 5-minute walk, 20-minute ride, 0 carbon. These numbers made the idea digestible even for those who couldn't imagine the engineering behind it. Globally, the reaction was a mix of awe and disbelief. Some saw it as the next leap for humanity, while others called it unrealistic. Yet what kept people fascinated was the clarity of the vision. In a world where most new cities are only expansions of what already exists, the Line positioned itself as something entirely new. But as with all big dreams, reality was waiting just beyond the blueprints. If you're finding this story as fascinating as I am, hit the like button and subscribe. It helps the channel grow, and it makes sure you don't miss the next deep dive into the world's most ambitious mega projects. The original budget for NEOM was announced at around $500 billion, already a figure that placed it among the largest developments in history. But as the years passed, the numbers began to swell. The Line, with its mirrored walls and stacked infrastructure, demanded more than just traditional construction. It required inventing new building methods altogether. Costs quickly climbed, and outside analysts began projecting totals closer to $1 trillion. By 2024, Reuters reported that just the first phase of the project might consume more than $300 billion. The main source of funding comes from Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund, which also supports many of the country's high-profile ventures. Yet even a sovereign fund has limits. And to balance the books, Saudi Arabia began looking to bond markets, local sukuk, and possible private partnerships. These financial experiments revealed the pressure behind the dream. In mid-2025, Reuters reported that the fund had written down $8 billion across flagship projects, including NEOM. While not a cancellation, it was a stark reminder that the financial strain was real. The higher the cost climbs, the more urgent it becomes to prove tangible progress. Despite the glossy renderings that flood social media, the desert itself tells a different story. The clearest sign of progress came in October 2024 when Sindala, the luxury island resort, opened its doors. Though small compared to the line, it gave NEOM a first working piece, complete with visitors and revenue. Along the coast, Oxagon's port development has also moved forward, with new cranes and plans to reveal a major terminal milestone by 2026. The line, however, lags far behind its promises. Satellite images show excavation work stretching across the desert, yet timelines have shifted repeatedly. Entire completion targets have been scaled back, with near-term goals reduced to only a few kilometers of livable city by 2030. These smaller steps are meant to keep the vision alive, but they also underline the gap between ambition and current reality. For every promotional video, there are still long stretches of sand where skyscraper walls were supposed to rise. The question remains, can visible progress catch up before global patience runs out? In early 2024, Bloomberg reported a dramatic adjustment in NEOM's near-term ambitions. The line was originally pitched to house 1.5 million residents by 2030, but leaked figures suggest a pivot toward fewer than 300,000 people in that same timeframe, with only about 2.4 kilometers of the structure built. That scale back was quickly denied by Saudi officials, who insisted that the long-term vision remained intact. Yet the reports highlighted an undeniable truth. Financial and logistical constraints were forcing the project to adapt. This adjustment signaled more than a change in numbers. It revealed the government's strategy of focusing on symbolic progress rather than delivering the entire city all at once. By promising a smaller, functional stretch, they could showcase proof of concept while buying time for larger investments. Internal audits reportedly criticized overly optimistic assumptions and the pressure to make the numbers look workable, sparking leadership reshuffles within the project. Scaling back is not unusual for megaprojects, but in NEOM's case, it carries added weight. The line's futuristic identity rests on its massive scale, and shrinking that scope undermines its City of the Future branding. To skeptics, it suggests cracks in the kingdom's confidence. To supporters, it was simply realism, a way to make sure the project could cross its first finish line rather than stall completely. Either way, the recalibration showed that while the dream might still be alive, its path forward was far more cautious than the original dazzling promises. Turning renders into reality requires more than ambition. Constructing the line means cutting a trench that stretches like a country, pouring unprecedented volumes of concrete and steel, and anchoring a wall half a kilometer tall into desert ground prone to heat, dust, and shifting sands. Even the basics, keeping interiors cool when outside temperatures hit 50 degrees, demand innovations in insulation, airflow, and energy systems that are not yet proven at this scale. The engineering doesn't stop there. Utility tunnels, mass transit corridors, layered public spaces, all must be stacked vertically and function seamlessly without the sprawl that makes repairs and upgrades easier in normal cities. Each segment of the line isn't just a building, it's a city in miniature, demanding precision in water systems, sewage, ventilation, and digital infrastructure. Trying to fast-track these methods in a region that has never attempted anything close in complexity adds enormous risk. Even Oxagon's port, though simpler on paper, requires dredging, massive quay walls, and fully automated crane systems on a timeline that many experts already call optimistic. Building fast can sustain public excitement, but it also multiplies the chance of technical errors that lead to delays and soaring costs. The truth is that engineering this scale is as much invention as construction, and every misstep threatens to stretch the timeline further. Ambition is the allure, but it is also the very thing that keeps pushing the finish line further away. One of NEOM's strongest selling points has always been its promise of sustainability. But here lies one of the greatest contradictions. The Gulf of Aqaba and the northern Red Sea, where parts of NEOM are being built, contain coral reefs that are unusually resilient to heat, rare ecosystems science believe could survive longer than most in a warming world. NEOM has highlighted its coral restoration projects and partnerships with researchers as proof it can enhance, not destroy, local biodiversity. Yet critics argue that the sheer amount of dredging, concrete, and steel poured into the desert and coastline front-loads enormous environmental costs. Large-scale construction like this emits vast amounts of carbon, especially in its earliest stages when cement and steel dominate the process. Climate scientists point out that global emissions need to fall immediately, not in decades. NEOM's promise is that once complete, the line will run on renewable energy and keep nature intact. But the emissions released now during construction will land during the planet's most critical decade for climate action. There are other worries. Massive mirrored walls, artificial lakes, and altered coastlines could shift wind patterns and rainfall in the region. A senior climate advisor told the Financial Times in 2025 that projects of this size can unintentionally reshape microclimates, leading to unpredictable consequences for both humans and ecosystems. This paradox, building a green city through one of the most carbon-heavy construction phases imaginable, sits at the core of the debate. Supporters see NEOM as a long-term investment in sustainable living. Opponents see it as sacrificing the present climate reality for a futuristic promise that may never fully materialize. The boldest buildings are not NEOM's hardest challenge. The people are. The land designated for NEOM was home to the Hoitat tribe, and reports from the United Nations and Human Rights Watch described forced evictions, with some members sentenced to death after opposing relocation. Saudi authorities insist that compensation and new jobs have been offered, yet advocacy groups say the removals were neither consensual nor fair. The fallout has turned the line into a global flashpoint, where conversations about futuristic urban design collide with basic human rights. Labor conditions have raised further alarms. Construction in the Gulf often relies on migrant workers who face punishing heat and long hours. Rights groups warn that without the strictest protections, building in the desert could lead to widespread abuses, from unpaid wages to heat-related illnesses and deaths. For critics, this undermines the credibility of a city that markets itself as humane and forward-thinking. The reputational cost is already clear. International organizations, potential investors, and skilled professionals weigh not only the technical feasibility of NEOM, but also its ethical baggage. A city can be made of glass and steel, but without legitimacy in the eyes of the world, it risks becoming a cautionary tale. Every news report about displaced families or unsafe labor practices adds friction to recruitment, contracts, and funding. The promise of NEOM is to create the city of tomorrow, but that dream will only resonate if people believe it is being built with respect for those living there today. Deadlines for global sporting events have placed an enormous spotlight on NEOM's progress. Trojana, the mountain resort, is set to host the 2029 Asian Winter Games, a bold promise given the site has no natural snowfall and will rely on artificial systems to create winter conditions in the desert. This ambitious pledge has already drawn skepticism, with Reuters reporting in 2025 that the Olympic Council of Asia even approached South Korea about stepping in if delays continued. Such moves suggest real doubts about whether Trojana can be ready in time. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia has also tied the line to its pitch for the 2034 FIFA World Cup, with plans to build a stadium in or near the futuristic city. These events were intended to showcase NEOM as more than drawings and renderings, giving it global credibility. Yet missed deadlines or scaled-back venues could damage not only the project's image, but also Saudi Arabia's broader strategy to use sports as a platform for international recognition. Sports deadlines cannot be shifted easily, which means the clock is ticking loudly for NEOM. Despite its challenges, NEOM is not doomed by definition. Success might look different than the original sweeping vision, but partial victories matter. If Oxagon's port becomes operational by 2026, Sindala proves itself as a luxury destination, and Trojana shows visible progress, the brand stabilizes. Even a functioning 2 to 5 kilometer stretch of the line, with schools, clinics, and real families living inside, could demonstrate the concept at human scale. Saudi officials often call NEOM a generational investment, hinting that its measure of success is not tied strictly to 2030. Instead, credibility will depend on delivering tangible, livable communities in the short term while convincing the world that the grander promise is still achievable. That path would not silence critics, but it could give NEOM the decades it needs to turn ambition into reality. Whether it becomes a living city or a $1 trillion warning, it has already changed how we think about the future of urban life. I booked my last trip to Cancun for half the usual price, and no, I'm not gatekeeping. I used Expedia, and I've got an affiliate link below that gets you the same deals. No extra cost to you, just real savings. I'm really grateful for your time and attention. I spend hours curating the best information possible for you, and then try to present it to you in an entertaining way. So if you appreciate that, it would be awesome if you could buy me a coffee, so I can caffeine up and make great videos like this. And don't miss the next one. We'll explore the world's most dangerous mega project, a story so risky it makes NEOM look almost safe.